What's up? It's your boy D Change coming at you with another Daily Dave. Today, let's talk about Century Egg. Kind of random, but I was just left with such an impression this morning that I must talk about it. So my mom made some, I guess it's like salty lean pork and century egg porridge the other day, like only a couple days ago. And since we had some left over, I had it for breakfast. But yeah, this morning just couldn't do it. You know, the century egg was kind of, you could just tell, you could taste it, and it was not good. I think it was just too old or whatever. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, century egg is I'm gonna pull up Wikipedia right now just to go through the motions. In Mandarin it's pi dan. In I totally pronounce it really poorly. Pi dan. In Cantonese it's pei dan. So it's known as preserved egg, 100-year egg, 1,000-year egg, 1,000-year-old egg, millennium egg, skin egg, and black egg. It's a Chinese preserved food product and delicacy made by preserving duck, chicken, or quail eggs in a mixture of clay, ash, salt, quicklime, and rice hulls for several weeks to several months, depending on the method of processing. Through the process, the yolk becomes a dark green to gray color with a creamy consistency and strong flavor due to the hydrogen sulfide and ammonia present, while the white becomes a dark brown translucent jelly with a salty flavor. The transforming agent in the century egg is an alkaline salt, which gradually raises the pH of the egg to around 9 to 12 during the curing process. This chemical process breaks down some of the complex flavorless proteins and fats, which produces a variety of smaller, flavorful compounds. Some eggs have patterns near the surface of the egg white, which are likened to pine branches, giving rise to one of its Chinese names, the pine-patterned egg. Okay, so it's a preserved food, right? It's not literally made in 100 years. That's kind of crazy. It would be a lot more expensive and harder to get, I would assume, if that were the case. But yeah, it's pretty common in certain dishes, I would say. The ones I'm most familiar with are the one I mentioned earlier, which is the rice porridge with century egg and lean pork. And there's another one which is it's like this vegetable dish that you'll find in a lot of Cantonese restaurants. I don't remember which vegetable it is, but they use a mixture of like white egg and century egg and some gravy and just slather it on. I forget if there's like pork meat in it, probably not. But yeah, that's another option. Anyway, why did I want to talk about this? Well, it's just funny because yeah, I legit like almost activated my gag reflex this morning when I was eating it. It just ended up not being it for me, right? And it's funny because I think about this made me think about how you know, if you didn't grow up eating century egg, you probably wouldn't like it because it's very much an acquired taste. I immediately thought, like, if you didn't eat this growing up, I probably would not recommend you ever try it. I think it's very similar to other foods that, you know, people stereotypically will single out as like, that's insane, like stinky tofu, natto. I wouldn't say kimchi, because actually kimchi has, if anything, has become a lot cooler. I think it's because it is like a spicy thing. But like, and yeah, clearly I'm singling out like East Asian foods right now, right? There's a lot of other stuff, right? There's I can't pronounce it. It's like that Nordic fish where you like bury it and let it ferment. There's a lot of foods like that, and it this makes me harken back to kind of the thought of who thought these things were a good idea, right? Don't get me wrong, like we have a lot of amazing foods now because people taking this idea and running with it, right? But it's just like, to me, the initial thought of like, who thought it was a good idea to just like bury your food in the ground and hope it worked out for the best? Like, you dig it up and you're like, I don't know, you know, might want to try it. But maybe that's how arguably soft we are in the modern era, where, you know, if it's outside of the fridge for 2 hours, FDA says, I don't know. But yeah, like it's definitely one of those things I think about where it seems strange to me now because of, you know, everything we're allotted now. But yeah, in an age where you don't have refrigeration, a freezer, you don't have other methods to preserve food, you're gonna resort to what you have around you, right? And so this kind of harkens back to the other video I did about like, oh, our perceptions of like ancient people or even people in our past, right? Our ancestors. Very interesting. And yeah, I don't want to single out Asian foods either, because obviously that's definitely not the case. If anything, I love a lot of Asian cuisine much more than, I guess, the typical American palate. Let's be real here, blue cheese is disgusting. And it's the same type of thing. It's, you know, it's cheese. Cheese is like milk, and you're like, let's let the milk sit out for a while. I mean, let it get like thick, and then stir it around and make it into blocks, right? And then some cheeses are more like smelly and like borderline rancid, you know? And like some people like that, you know, it's like, oh, the richness of the cheese, you know, it's the same thing. It's a preserved food. It's you're letting it break down and go through a chemical process to transform it into another thing. Blue cheese to me is like, oh my gosh, you're letting it rot now, and it tastes like rot in my mouth. And yeah, it's a flavor I just I've given it multiple tries. I'll eat it if it's there, but I would never prefer it. Is all I'm saying. So there's just stuff like that out there, you know. And yeah, it makes me wonder if like if I'm either losing the ability to have acquired tastes, which I don't necessarily think, but I do think that the older we get, the more narrow we tend to want our palates to be, or our palates change, right? Like I've talked about kind of losing the sweet tooth, besides sugar water, like stuff like cola sodas and some like maybe fruit juice drinks are still definitely like, those are my jam. But when it comes to like overly sweet snacks and pastries and cakes and stuff like that, like I really can't do stuff like that anymore. But I noticed that like I like maybe either more complex flavors, or flavors that I thought were like much stranger back in the day. Now I'm much more willing to partake, you know. I remember growing up, like, hated a lot. I didn't like a lot of vegetables. There was a lot of fish meat that I didn't enjoy, and I probably thought like chicken and beef were like the two main things that I would stick with. And now I think I lean more towards pork. You know, vegetables are kind of, I'm much more into like eating vegetables now, even if they're like flavors that I'm not used to, like kale. Like kale is definitely just kind of like, I don't have a lot of it, and I don't necessarily need a lot of it, but you know, if vegetables, if they're good and they're available, sure, we'll go for it, you know. There's some where maybe the flavor is just like really out there, and I'm not used to it. And then yeah, with like, I don't know, fish meats in general, as long as it's not too fishy and not like overly like feeling like I'm gonna get killed by something, it's fine, you know. But that's the thing, like I'm pretty sure in like 30 years my palate will be different too. I probably won't be eating a lot of fried stuff at that age. I've noticed with my parents, like I've seen them change kind of like what they want to eat, you know. They've definitely moved away from the fried foods. They move more towards, I guess, a more like fundamentally Mediterranean diet, you know, more vegetables, more lighter things in general. But again, we were raised with Cantonese cuisine, so we've always deviated. We've always been in that bucket of cuisine anyway. Southern China is well known for its use of fresh ingredients, lots of veggies, and like what would you call it? Like thin, transparent broth. It's like a lot of bone broth, a lot of chicken stock. Just soups that are boiled to be kind of like an accompanying drink, but not like super thick and gravy like. Anyway, that was my talk about like food. All of a sudden, I just wanted to. It was the most visceral reaction I had today. It was the beginning of the day. I felt like I was compelled to tell all of you about it. Now, does that mean I'm gonna stop eating Century egg? Probably not. It's still really good when it's served. I think the way at the time it's supposed to be eaten. I honestly just think it was a matter of unfortunately, like that. Unfortunately, that's the thing. When you have leftovers, one of the risks I think you do take is the flavor profile of the food can change drastically. Usually that's not the case. Realistically, like, we have plenty of leftovers for dinner, and it's generally fine. Yeah, it gets a little bit more stale, it gets a little bit less flavorful, or maybe it feels a little bit older. That I've noticed. I've become more sensitive to older tasting meats, and that's well, I mean, I don't know if it's unfortunate, because what if it's bad for me, right? That's the other thing. Is like, maybe how many times have I been, fucking up my gut because I've been eating food that, like, shouldn't sit in me or whatever, right? I don't know. I've always been a little bit more on the sensitive side, so I feel like I've had to be more careful anyway. Same with my dad. Like, yeah, we're just not. I don't know. We're just not built to like be human trash cans. Basically, we can't eat anything and everything, even if we wanted to. So, yeah, it was just really interesting because yeah, typically I'm like, oh yeah, Century egg is great, man. It's like, it's fantastic. It's got a different type of flavor. I love egg in like any form anyway. Though I haven't tried balut, and I probably wouldn't. But I like egg in general, and Century egg is an interesting extension of it. And yeah, like typically I'd be like, yeah, this is cool, man. This is my jam. It's just today I took a bite into it and I was like, nope, not today, buddy. Just wasn't good. So it happens, man. Sometimes you have a favorite food too, and Century egg is not a favorite food of mine necessarily. It's just sometimes you have foods that you really enjoy, and sometimes it's I think it's a matter of luck. Like, oops, the preparation was off, or you got a bad batch, or your tastes change, and it's like, okay, I guess I just don't like this anymore. It happens. Sorry, So anyway, thanks for coming to my TED Talk. This was a speech about food, culinary education. No. Thanks for listening. I will see you in the next one. Peace out, everybody.